Good to see you, and welcome to Drift Stories. Before we begin tonight's cozy story, I invite you to take a moment to get comfortable in your bed. Let your eyes soften, let your breath slow, and allow the day to gently fade away. You don't need to do anything, just listen and drift. The morning air smells of sea salt and driftwood. Theo stands at the edge of the wooden dock, one hand resting in the pocket of his jacket, the other gripping Scout's leash. The old golden retriever sits beside him, tail gently thumping against the boards, nose twitching at the breeze. Across the water, Cedar Isle rises like a quiet promise. Green hills and misty trees, a lighthouse barely visible through the low clouds. There are no cars on the island, no highways, just dirt paths and sea-washed trails. Theo hasn't been here in years, not since he was a boy. The place hasn't changed much, at least from a distance. A seagull drifts overhead, crying out once before vanishing into the clouds. Scout shifts his weight and leans slightly against Theo's leg. "Yeah, I'm a little nervous too," Theo says, scratching behind his ears. "We'll be all right, just a quiet few days." The small ferry, nothing more than a stout wooden boat with a canopy and a wide deck, chugs into view around the corner of the harbor. The sound of the engine is steady and soft, blending into the rhythm of the water. Rowan, the ferry operator, waves from the wheelhouse. He looks barely 20, with a mop of sun-bleached hair and a windbreaker that flaps as he docks. A faded sticker on the cabin window reads, "Isle Mail and Ferry Co. Morning," Rowan calls out. "You must be Theo and Scout." Theo smiles. "We are." "Hop aboard, then. She's not fast, but she floats." Theo leads Scout onto the boat, guiding him gently across the narrow ramp. Scout steps carefully, sniffing everything like it's the first time. They find a spot near the front, beside a coil of rope and a rusty lantern. Theo sits on a low bench. Scout settles at his feet, his chin resting on his paws. Rowan unties the mooring and climbs back into the cabin. With a soft hum, the ferry pulls away from the dock. The harbor falls behind them slowly, replaced by the open sound. Seagulls swoop and call, and the boat rocks gently over the small swells. Theo watches the island grow clearer as they approach. The lighthouse on the cliff, the sloped meadows, the little cluster of homes tucked near the shore. He breathes in deeply. The air is cool and full of something clean. Rowan leans out of the cabin. "You staying long?" "A few days," Theo says. "Long enough to forget what time it is, hopefully." Rowan grins. "You came to the right place. No clocks on the island worth trusting anyway. Mira keeps the best time. She runs the lighthouse." Theo nods. "I remember her. She used to give me biscuits when I came with my grandfather. She still does," Rowan laughs. "Scout might have luck with that." Scout lifts his head at the sound of his name, tail thumping once. Rowan reaches into his pocket and tosses him a dog biscuit. Scout catches it clumsily and crunches it with satisfaction. The island draws closer. Waves lap gently at the side of the ferry. Small boats bob along wooden docks, and weathered houses sit back from the shoreline. Everything looks soft-edged, like the island is still waking up. Theo feels a lightness in his chest. It's been a while since he's felt that. "We dock over there," Rowan says, pointing to a small wooden landing framed by wild grasses. "Town's just a short walk inland. Mira's place is up near the point, by the trees. Can't miss it." The ferry bumps gently against the dock. Rowan tosses a rope around a cleat and ties it off. "Here we are," he says. Theo stands, stretching a little. Scout rises too, giving a short shake, ears flopping. The old dog seems just as eager to step off as he was to step on. "Thanks for the ride," Theo says. "Come find me when you're ready to head back," Rowan replies, already untying the ropes and whistling a tune. Theo and Scout step off the ferry and onto the dock. The wood is soft with age, and tufts of grass grow up between the planks. The air smells different here. Pine trees, salt, and something sweet he can't quite name. He looks up toward the hill where the lighthouse waits, just barely visible above the trees. "Let's go, old boy," he says, patting Scout gently. Together they walk inland toward whatever waits quietly ahead. The path from the dock is soft underfoot, scattered with pine needles and lined with low stone walls half covered in moss. Theo walks slowly, letting Scout lead the way. The golden retriever trots ahead with purpose, tail waving like a small flag. His nose brushes every patch of grass and every rock as if memorizing the island all over again. The road curves past a cluster of weathered cottages, their gardens tangled and wild in a way that feels intentional. Seathrift and lavender grow freely, and hand-painted mailboxes lean slightly from age. One cottage has a row of boots lined neatly on the porch, each one a different size. Another has a string of faded prayer flags stretching from a fence post to a crooked apple tree. A woman in a yellow raincoat waves from her garden but doesn't say anything. Her dog, a small shaggy mutt, barks once, then lies back down in a patch of sun. Theo nods politely, keeping on. Cedar Isle is quieter than he remembers, though he's not sure if the island has changed or if he has. There's no hum of cars, no background chatter, just the soft rush of wind in the trees and the distant caw of a raven overhead. Scout stops to drink from a shallow puddle in the path. Theo pulls out a folded map from his jacket pocket. It's old, the ink faded, but the lines are still visible. A dotted trail curves up the hill toward the lighthouse, marked with a tiny star. He follows it now, past the general store, which is little more than a square wooden building with a hand-painted sign and a bench out front. Inside, a bell jingles as he steps through the door. The shelves are filled with essentials: tea tins, candles, dried fruit, postcards. An older man with a white beard and a gentle face stands behind the counter, polishing a jar of honey. "You're Mira's guest?" he asks. Theo nods. "Just arrived." The man smiles. "She'll be glad. Been a while since she had company." Theo buys a small loaf of bread, a jar of blackberry jam, and a thermos of hot tea. The man wraps it all in brown paper and tucks in a note: "Sunrise is best from the back porch," before sliding it across the counter. Back on the path, Scout walks with a little more bounce, sensing the hill ahead. The trail grows narrower, winding through trees that lean together like old friends. Bits of sunlight fall through the canopy, flickering across the forest floor. Theo remembers this path from his childhood, how it used to feel longer, steeper. He and his grandfather had walked it often, stopping to rest on the flat rock halfway up. He sees it now, the rock still there, streaked with lichen and surrounded by ferns. He pauses, sitting down just for a moment. Scout flops beside him with a huff and licks his paw. "Do you remember?" Theo says softly. "We came up here a long time ago, just you, me, and Grandpa." Scout blinks at him, clearly more interested in the squirrel rustling nearby. Theo laughs under his breath and stands again. "Right, let's keep going." At the top of the trail, the lighthouse appears like a quiet sentinel. It's smaller than he remembers, but still proud: whitewashed stone, red roof, and the soft glint of the lens catching the afternoon light. A small house sits beside it, its windows open, lace curtains fluttering. A figure stands on the porch, one hand on her hip, the other holding a mug. Her gray hair is braided and wrapped like a crown, and her sweater is thick and worn at the elbows. She smiles as they approach. "You've gotten taller," she says. Theo grins. "And you haven't changed at all." Mira steps down from the porch and kneels to greet Scout, who wags like he's met an old friend. "I've missed this dog," she says, "and I suppose I've missed you too." Theo hands her the paper-wrapped parcel from the store. "Brought you jam." Mira lifts an eyebrow. Bribery already? I must be getting soft. She turns and pushes open the door with her elbow. Come on in. I've got tea on the stove and the best chair still by the fire. Theo follows her inside, Scout close behind. The lighthouse waits outside, steady and patient as ever. Mira's house smells like warm cedar, old books, and something sweet baking in the oven. Theo steps inside and feels it immediately, the comfort of a place that's been lived in for a long time. The floors creak gently beneath his boots. Scout trots forward and flops down near the stove, tail thudding once before he settles. Same old dog, Mira says, placing a kettle back on the iron stovetop. Knows where the warm spots are. Theo shrugs off his jacket and hangs it on a wooden peg by the door. The inside of the cottage is simple but full of life. Shelves of mismatched mugs, dried herbs hanging from a beam, and a map of the island pinned above the writing desk. A pair of binoculars sits beside a feather and a jar of sea glass. I always thought you lived inside the lighthouse, Theo says. I did once, Mira replies, handing him a cup of tea. But this house is quieter. The tower's for the light now. And sometimes on stormy nights, the gulls. Theo takes a sip, chamomile with a slice of lemon and honey stirred in. This is better than I remembered. Mira smiles and sinks into the armchair by the window. She rests her mug on the wide wooden arm and leans back, eyes soft. Your grandfather used to sit right there, she says, nodding at the chair across from her, always with a book he never quite finished. Theo lowers himself into the chair slowly. He always said he liked the feeling of an unfinished story. Mira chuckles. He said that a lot. About books, about life. Always left room for the next chapter. They sit quietly for a moment, the only sound the soft tick of a wall clock and the occasional crack from the stove. Outside, the wind brushes the trees and the lighthouse stands steady against the blue-gray sky. Scout snores lightly, his paws twitching in a dream. You two came a lot back then, Mira says, always walking the cliff trail, rain or shine. Theo nods. He said it was the best view in the world. It still is, Mira says, then adds, he was right about that. She rises and picks up a metal tin from a high shelf. From it, she pulls out an old photo, faded at the corners but still clear. In it, a younger Mira stands beside a tall, smiling man with a beard and wine-burned cheeks. A boy, maybe 10 years old, grins between them, one hand on a golden puppy. That one's yours, she says, handing it over. I found it when I cleared out the tower loft. Theo holds the photo with both hands. I don't remember this being taken. Mira smiles. Your grandfather did. He called it his lighthouse summer. Theo feels something shift quietly inside him. Not sadness, exactly. Something gentler. A sense of something returned. Thank you, he says. Mira waves a hand, just keeping it safe. She disappears into the kitchen and returns a moment later with 2 cinnamon scones wrapped in a cloth napkin. Still warm, she says. I make them when the air starts changing. Theo takes one, biting into it slowly. You haven't lost your touch. Of course not, Mira says, settling back into her chair. I just need someone to bake for now and then. Scout stirs and lifts his head, nose sniffing the air. Mira tosses him a small corner of scone. He catches it without moving his body, just a shift of his mouth. Theo laughs. He's really perfected the lazy catch. Age earns its shortcuts, Mira says. They watch the light begin to change outside the window, clouds parting, the soft wash of late afternoon slipping through the trees. The lighthouse beacon flickers once, then glows, even though it's not yet needed. It turns slowly, steady, and patient. I think I needed this, Theo says after a while. Mira doesn't answer right away. She just sips her tea, eyes distant, and then says, sometimes the island knows when to call people back. Scout stands, stretches, and pads over the door. He gives it a soft whine. Walk? Mira asks. Theo stands, finishing the last sip of tea. Let's go. They step out into the cool evening, the light soft on the hilltop. The lighthouse beam turns behind them, sweeping slowly out to sea. The morning mist arrives quietly. Theo wakes early, pulled from sleep by the soft rustle of branches outside the window. The air in Mira's guest room is cool and smells faintly of salt and pine. Scout is already up, standing by the door with his ears perked and his tail low, waiting for the day to begin. Theo dresses quietly, slips on his boots, and grabs his thermos from the bedside table. Scout follows him down the stairs, paws making no sound on the worn steps. Mira is not yet awake. A note on the kitchen table reads, "Gone to the garden. Warm scones in the oven. Take the trail if the mist clears." Theo tucks the note in his coat pocket, pours a bit of water into Scout's dish, and pockets a scone wrapped in a napkin. Outside, the world is soft and gray. The fog curls around the trees like wool, thick but gentle. It muffles everything, the chirp of birds, the sound of waves, even their footsteps on the trail. Theo breathes it in. The mist carries a kind of stillness that feels like stepping into someone else's dream. They take the cliffside path Mira showed them the day before, the one that winds through the trees and opens occasionally to views of the sea. Except today, the sea is missing, hidden behind a pale wall of cloud. Scout walks ahead, tail raised, nose close to the ground. Every few feet he pauses, sniffs, then trots forward again. Theo follows at a steady pace, letting the trail lead him. "Don't go too far," he says. Scout pauses to look back, tongue out, then keeps moving. His fur glows faintly golden in the soft light. Theo stops near a large boulder and sips from his thermos. The tea is still warm. He takes a bite of the scone. It tastes of cinnamon and something floral, lavender maybe. When he looks up, Scout is gone. He calls once, lightly. "Scout?" No sound, no movement. He waits, listening for the jingle of Scout's collar, the familiar pad of paws. Nothing. Theo's heart skips. He calls again, louder this time. "Scout! Come on, boy!" The fog presses in. Trees stretch tall and still in every direction. The trail ahead splits slightly. One branch curls downhill toward the rocky shore, the other into the forest. Theo chooses the downhill path, heart now beating faster. His boots scuff against damp earth and wet leaves. "Scout!" he shouts. "Where'd you go?" Only silence answers. The path narrows. Theo catches a flash of gold through the fog and moves toward it, but it's only dried grass. He cups his hands to his mouth and calls again. "Scout! Come, boy!" The fear creeps in quietly, like the mist itself. Scout's older now. He doesn't move as fast. What if he slipped? What if he's stuck somewhere? Theo presses on, deeper into the fog, eyes scanning every bend. His voice sounds small in the thick air. He thinks of the cliffs, how they drop off without warning in places. Scout wouldn't go near the edge, would he? He reaches a low stone outcrop and climbs it carefully. From the top, he sees nothing but gray. The ocean below is hidden. The trees, the trail, all swallowed by the fog. Then a sound, a bark, faint but sharp, not far. Theo turns. "Scout!" Another bark, closer now. He heads toward it, voice lifting. "Good boy, keep barking." The shape of a figure appears in the mist. Not Scout, but Mira. She walks steadily, a flashlight in one hand, her scarf tied tight against the wind. "He's over here," she says, calm as always. Theo follows quickly. Just past the tree line, near a hollow where the trail dips and curves, Scout stands wagging his tail, looking completely unbothered. Mira reaches down and scratches behind his ears. "Found himself a rabbit trail, I think." Theo exhales all at once and kneels beside his dog. "You scared me, bud." Scout licks his face in apology. Mira stands nearby, watching the reunion with a quiet smile. "Sometimes even the sure-footed get turned around in the fog," she says. Theo nods, his hand resting on Scout's collar. "I thought I lost him." "You didn't," Mira says simply, and he came back. They start walking again, this time together, Mira in the lead, Scout between them. The fog begins to lift, just slightly, letting in a little more light. I don't think I've yelled that loud in years, Theo admits. Mira chuckles. The island's used to echoes. It won't mind. Back on the trail, the lighthouse appears again through the mist, tall and solid as ever. Scout trots forward, tail wagging as if nothing happened. Theo shakes his head and laughs softly. Next time, he says, you're getting a bell. Back at the cottage, the fog begins to thin. Sunlight peeks through in pale strips, falling gently across the lighthouse windows and dappling the moss-covered path. Scout trots ahead like nothing happened, his tongue lolling and ears flopping with each step. Theo follows behind, a little slower, his heart still not quite steady. Mira walks beside him, her hands in her coat pockets, her eyes scanning the horizon like it's second nature. He doesn't even look tired, Theo says. Mira smiles. He's not the one who was running around in a panic. Theo lets out a breath that sounds almost like a laugh. No, I guess not. They climb the shallow hill toward the lighthouse, the light above them turning slowly, casting long, ghost-like beams that fade into the mist. Scout stops to sniff a patch of heather, then plops down on the front step, tail sweeping once across the boards. Inside, the cottage feels warm again. Mira opens a window to let the foggy damp out and sets a kettle on the stove. Theo sinks into the armchair, rubbing his hands over his face. I didn't expect to feel that shaken. It happens, Mira says, rinsing 2 mugs in the sink, especially when you care about something more than you admit. Theo glances at Scout, who is now curled up by the hearth, snoring softly. He's been with me through a lot, he says. I guess I've had a few things walk away over the years. Scout's the one that always stayed. Mira says nothing, just places a steaming mug on the table beside him. I kept thinking, Theo continues, what if this is the day he doesn't come back? But it wasn't, Mira says gently. No, but it might be someday. Mira sits down across from him. Someday's not today. They sit quietly for a while. Outside, the fog continues to lift. Trees appear again in full form. The coastline returns in gentle strokes. The ocean, once hidden, now glimmers like brushed silver. I didn't realize how loud it was in my head until I got here, Theo says. It's like everything off the island hums too much. Mira nods slowly. That hum sticks to people. The island helps shake it loose. Theo takes another sip of tea and leans back. Do you ever think of leaving? Sometimes, she admits, but then I walk to the cliffs at sunset, or I hear the foghorn in the night, and I think, no, I belong here. Scout shifts in his sleep, letting out a muffled bark. He agrees with you, Theo says. Mira smiles. Smart dog. Theo pulls the photograph from his pocket, the one she gave him a few days ago. He studies the younger version of himself, all skinny limbs and crooked teeth beaming between Mira and his grandfather. You were all so sure back then, he says quietly. I remember thinking this place would always be here. It is, Mira replies. It just waits differently. Theo traces the edges of the photo with his thumb. It feels like something I forgot, but not in a bad way. More like something I didn't know I missed. That's the island, Mira says. It doesn't press. It just reminds. Scout stirs and gets up, padding over to the door. He noses it gently. Another walk? Theo asks. Mira shrugs. He wants to see the light. They step outside together. The air smells fresh, newly washed by fog. The clouds are higher now, thin and drifting. The sea stretches out beyond the cliffs, calm and endless. Scout wanders ahead toward the lighthouse itself, where a narrow trail loops around its base. The great lens above catches a burst of sunlight and flashes once across the sky. Theo stands beside Mira and watches it turn. I forgot how steady it feels, he says. The light never stops, she says. even if no one's watching. Theo folds his arms, letting the breeze move through him. I think I'll stay a little longer, if that's all right. Mira nods. You're welcome as long as you like. Scout barks once as if in approval, then trots ahead. Theo follows, feeling the island settle around him like a well-worn coat. The next morning begins slowly, with golden light stretching across the kitchen floor and the scent of cinnamon drifting from the oven. Theo stands at the sink, drying a ceramic bowl with a faded tea towel. Scout lies in the sunbeam by the back door, belly up, one paw twitching now and then. Mira moves around the kitchen with a quiet efficiency, humming a tune Theo doesn't recognize but somehow feels familiar. It's the third day now, but it feels longer in the best way, like he's been here for weeks, or maybe always. Hand me that mug, Mira asks, holding out her hand without turning from the kettle. Theo passes it over. You always make cinnamon rolls on Wednesdays? Mira chuckles. Only when the weather's kind and there's someone around to eat them. Theo smiles. Scout's a strong motivator. The rolls come out warm and golden, the scent filling the little house. Mira places two on a plate and sets it down between them at the table. Scout lifts his head expectantly. You can have a corner, she says to him, only if you sit. Scout plops into a perfect sit, tail thudding. Mira tears off a small edge and hands it to him. He takes it with quiet pride. They eat slowly, the only sound the soft clink of forks and the wind brushing the windows. After breakfast, they fall into an easy rhythm. Mira carries a wicker basket and leads Theo out the back door. The lighthouse rises just beyond the trees, its shadow stretching long in the morning light. We'll gather kindling first, she says, already walking toward a clearing where pine needles gather in thick beds. The wind's been generous. Theo follows, the basket swinging gently in his hand. The trees above sway and creak softly, whispering things only they understand. They work in silence at first, picking fallen branches, snapping twigs into neat bundles. Scout meanders through the trees, nose to the ground, occasionally checking back in with a short bark. You've done this before, Theo says, watching Mira build a perfect stack. Every week for 40 years, she replies. You get good at noticing what's useful. Theo kneels beside her and adds his own bundle. Do you ever get tired of it? Mira shrugs. Some days, but the work reminds you where you are and that you belong here. They carry the kindling back, then begin cleaning the lighthouse tower. Mira hands Theo a long-handled brush and gestures to the wide windows near the top. You can reach, she says. Tall people get the sunny jobs. Theo climbs carefully, the spiral steps cool underfoot. At the top, he pauses to look out. The sea is calm and glassy. A lone sailboat floats near the horizon. The air smells of brine and something wild, something clean. He wipes the windows slowly, each pane catching a slightly different view of the world. When he comes back down, Mira is tending the lantern mechanism with the same care someone might give an old friend. She hums again, same tune as before. What is that song? Theo asks. My father used to whistle it, she says. Said it kept time better than any clock. Back at the cottage, they rest on the porch with mugs of tea. Scout lies between them, head on Mira's foot. Theo pulls a notebook from his coat pocket and flips it open. He's only written a few lines in it since arriving. Small thoughts, quiet moments. But today, he adds more. The light doesn't chase the dark. It just holds steady until morning. Mira doesn't speak, but she glances at him just briefly and nods. They sit a while longer, watching the afternoon drift past like a slow-moving tide. The lighthouse turns behind them, steady and sure. Somewhere far off, a bell buoy rings once, clear and soft. Theo takes a sip of tea and sighs. It's strange. I came here to forget a few things. And, Mira asks, I think I remembered what matters instead. Mira lifts her mug in a quiet toast. That's how the island works. Scout yawns, rolls onto his side, and falls asleep with a soft sigh. The sun slips low behind the trees, turning the lighthouse white with gold. Theo sits on the porch with a blanket over his legs, a mug of warm tea in hand, and Scout curled beside him like a drowsy sentry. Mira is inside, finishing a letter she plans to send with Rowan when the ferry comes tomorrow. She said she might bake again tonight, just because the weather feels like cinnamon, but Theo suspects she wants to give him a little time alone with the view. The sea is calm, the kind of stillness that feels earned. A single gull glides past without sound. The air smells like driftwood and the last of the day's sun. Theo looks out toward the lighthouse, its beam just beginning to turn, slow and certain, sweeping across the sky like a gentle reminder. He takes a slow sip of tea and lets his shoulders relax. He has not checked his phone in 4 days. He has not thought once about traffic, news, or deadlines. Instead, he has mended an old window latch. He's cleared brambles from a garden path. He's watched fog drift in and out like breath. And he has slept, really slept, for the first time in what feels like years. Scout shifts beside him, pressing gently against his leg. Theo scratches behind his ears. I think we found the right kind of quiet, he murmurs. The porch boards creak softly as Mira steps outside. She carries a plate with 2 slices of apple cake and 2 spoons tucked under her arm. She sits beside Theo, placing the plate between them. I figured we deserved dessert on a Tuesday, she says. Theo smiles. It's Wednesday. Mira waves it off. The calendar's just a suggestion out here. They eat slowly, watching the sky turn from gold to a soft lavender blue. The lighthouse beam sweeps again, brushing the tops of the trees, the hills, and the open sea. Mira speaks first. You could stay longer. Theo looks at her. Not startled, just quiet. I mean it, she says. There's work here if you want it. The place could use a second pair of hands. Theo glances at the lighthouse. You trust me with the light? Mira smirks. Not yet, but I might trust you with the porch. Scout lifts his head, ears perked as if casting his vote. Theo looks out again. The island stretches quietly ahead of him. The paths, the trees, the kitchen that always smells of honey and herbs. The space inside him that used to buzz with pressure now feels open, like clean linen hung out in the sun. I think I'd like that, he says, to stay. Mira nods once as though she already knew. They sit in companionable silence, broken only by the sound of a breeze rustling through the fir trees and the soft, rhythmic sweep of the lighthouse turning overhead. I'll have to send Rowan back without us tomorrow, Theo says. I'll slip him a few rolls for the trip, Mira replies. Scout lies down again, content with the decision already made. The moon begins to rise, pale and round, catching the lighthouse beam and sending a soft gleam across the porch floorboards. Theo leans back, his notebook open on his lap. He writes a single line across the top of a fresh page. Some lights don't point the way forward, they help you come home. He taps the end of the pen lightly on the page, then closes the book. Inside, the kitchen light glows warm through the window. The lighthouse turns again, steady and slow. Mira stands, brushing cake crumbs from her lap. Come in when you're ready, she says. Theo nods. I'll just sit a little longer. She leaves the door open for him. Theo watches the beam swing across the sky again, and with each pass it feels less like a signal and more like a welcome. He leans back, Scout at his feet, and lets the quiet take its time. For now, and maybe for a good while longer, this is exactly where he needs to be.